Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kizer Sealion. This is an interesting knife, certainly one that I've got lots to say about. This knife was sent to me by Mr. Anonymous. Mr. Anonymous sent me a whole bunch of interesting knives for review and then surprised me with 3 gifts, and this was one of them. So he donated this knife to the channel. Really, really cool. By the time you guys are seeing this review, this knife will already have been given away. I gave it away as one of the knives in my 20,000 subscriber giveaway. So thank you so much, Mr. Anonymous. That was really, really nice of you. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content, and it's also because, of my generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me right now. If you'd like to check out my Patreon and get your hands on one of these cool stickers, check out the link in the description. The support would absolutely mean the world to me. Let's go ahead and take a measurement of this guy. It's not a big knife, but it's not a small knife. Overall length coming in at like 7 3/4 inches. Blade length coming in at right about just shy of 3.5. Cutting edge coming in at about 3.3 inches overall. Nice medium-sized knife for sure. How about up against, let's do some size comparisons. Sorry, skipping out on that classic dialogue. Size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 coming in a little bit shorter at 7.25 inches overall. This knife reminds me a lot of the ZT-0450. I think the 0452 CF is the longer one, the 0450, the Sienkiewicz design. That's what it reminds me of a little bit. And I think it's close to the same size. I don't know that for sure. It's been a long time since I've handled that knife, but just as I guess, another potential point of reference there. How's the action on this guy? Well, as you can see, this feels like every other Kizer I've ever handled. Very snappy, very clicky detent, and then nice snap on the detent break. The flipper tab is a little bit in excess for this size of knife, but it makes it very easy to engage. And that detent break and then the snap into place is very, very satisfying. This knife doesn't have what I'd call a drop shot action, but it is very, very smooth. There isn't a lot of like friction or anything in there that gives me the impression that this knife wasn't put together properly. It's just a knife that's a little bit tighter in the pivot and will probably loosen up over time, but is going to be plenty reliable when you are deploying the knife and very, very easy to disengage and put away. So I have no issue there. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check on this guy. We'll get out my handy-dandy WIA bit selector and WIA stubby magnetic driver, 2 items that are extremely inexpensive and extremely recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. Just pull up in the store and look for knife maintenance. Go ahead and check the pivot here. I'm sure that it is T8. Yes, T8. What are we looking at for hardware down here? Are they T8? No way. I thought those were going to be T6. That's awesome. Awesome. Nice job. Okay, so pocket clip screws are going to be T6 and lock bar screws are going to be T6. No big deal. I don't care about those as much as I do the body screws. Those are the ones, the body screws and the pivot are the screws that I'm going to be primarily adjusting, right? So it's nice that those are all T8, and it's nice that they're minimal. Pivot assembly, 2 screws on the show side, 2 screws on the non-show side, and it's all T8. That's a winner design. In my book, no issue with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there, this is contoured titanium. So the overall design is not, or the profile isn't one that I would call thick or bulky, but I guess it's a little tiny bit thicker than the Para 3, especially with the pivot sticking up a little bit, but that's not what I'd call cause for concern or anything that anybody who's been carrying a normal size, like this is a medium-sized pocket knife, both in terms of thickness and length and height and all that. You've been carrying anything in remotely close to this, which is about as common as it gets in the modern folding knife world. This isn't going to bother you. Up against the Spyderco Para 3 and PM2, 2 knives that have unquestionably awkward carry profiles that nobody ever complains about. You can see there, handle length, we're coming in basically the same as the Para 3, maybe a little bit longer than the Para 3. Definitely not as long as the PM2. And despite the fact that this knife has a pretty large flipper tab, you can see there it's still not as high at maximum height as the PM2. So the flipper tab, I think, looks extra large because the rest of the knife is kind of, you know, slimmer in profile, skinnier in profile. So you could call that a pocket pecker. If you're carrying other things in your pocket besides this knife, yeah, and that flipper tab might bother you a little bit. If you only carry your knife in your knife pocket like me, and you're wearing regular pants, you know, regular jeans, regular work pants, this isn't going to bother you. I don't think this knife would be super, I mean, like, this isn't a big knife, right? So it depends on the type of pants you're wearing. Again, though, skinny jeans, athletic shorts, this is still probably not going to be an overly friendly knife. And again, if you've been used to carrying the Para 3 lightweight, or especially the Benchmade bug out, you still might not enjoy this thing. Let's go ahead and measure, before we weigh it, let's go ahead and measure blade stock thickness. All right, so thickness on the spine on this guy. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was reading that. I was like 180 thousandths. I didn't, I'm sorry, that was a brain fart. It's just, I'm going to say it's probably closer to 120 thousandths, between 115 and 120 thousandths. That makes sense. A knife that I know to be about 120, the Ritter Hogue, and it looks to be about the same. So sorry, that was really stupid. Let's take a look at the inside here. We do not have any milling on the inside on the titanium, but there's not a lot of titanium or steel here. So the weight on this guy comes in a totally reasonable 3.53 ounces, which is just over, I mean, in terms of overall blade length, we're right there. Ounce an inch. In terms of cutting edge, is just under that. This is not a cumbersome object. It is not a heavy object. For most people, this is not something that is going to bother you in the pocket. I wouldn't even worry about it. So let's go ahead and talk about the anatomy here. We have nicely rounded, oh, so beautifully contoured and knocked down titanium scales. Kizer does a great job of this. Some of their designs are a little bit angular, but a lot of the ones that I've seen that are contoured are just beautifully, they are so nicely rounded. There is no hint of a sharp spot anywhere on this knife. Pocket clip, handle scale, none of this. This is all so nice and smooth. Very, very, very comfortable. There's some texturing here. I imagine that, I don't know, do sea lions have, is this something that's a part of a sea? I don't know. But it's nice. I don't know that it offers any meaningful traction, but it adds character. It's like I often say, it adds character to an otherwise very, very plain aesthetic. The combination of those little texture marks and the little pivot collar are adding some character there, so that's nice. And they don't, you know, they don't hinder the knife's utilitarian potential, so no issue there whatsoever. Despite there being a sort of a butt end here, I can get a full forefinger grip. Oftentimes I will complain about a design that forces your hand into a specific spot on the knife. That is more often the case. I will complain a lot more if it's a knife that has a lot of handle room and then it's still forcing your hand into a specific spot. This knife was obviously designed to not be mega huge and cater to people who like to, you know, make use of that's a pretty good length of cutting edge, 3.3 inches, right? You're making good use of that in a knife that is not super long and fairly compact. So oftentimes that's going to be the case in a you know, handle like this, that you only get 4 fingers. Now, if this area down here wasn't forced, and I understand that's locking me in, honestly, the ergonomics are good enough here, and I feel locked in enough that this probably could have just been shaved off, and it would have just felt a little bit more. Now, if you have smaller hands, you're going to be just fine. I just barely fit in here, and I wear an XL glove. And I like to get a full 4-finger grip on the knife, and I like to be able to bear down on it. This knife is built in a way that suggests it really could be taken out and used fairly hard, right? So it's comfortable and it's fine. I feel pretty tight in here, but I mean, it's good enough. And it is, you know, again, it's a smaller design, shorter handle. So not going to really count it off too much, but I kind of wish that that wasn't there. It's okay. Let's take a look at the blade here. So this is made by Kizer. Kizer manufactures knives out of China. They are known for having really, really good manufacturing quality and fit and finish. I've handled many Kizer knives. I can speak to this. Yeah, they're very consistent, right? If you don't like to buy from China, that's fine. Don't buy from China. But if you are looking to pick up a knife of really, really high quality using the true 6L4V titanium and steels like S35VN for substantially less than what we see from American production companies, and that is, you know, just a reminder, it is perfectly reasonable that American production knives using titanium and S35VN cost more money because, say it with me, manufacturing and labor costs are higher here. So yeah, that makes sense. But not everybody has the same budget, right? Can afford to pay the same stuff, right? So do what feels right to you. That's perfectly fine. I will always review knives from everywhere on this channel. I like knives, and as long as they aren't clones, I don't really care where they come from. So yeah, that is the case here. But given that the manufacturing quality is very, very high, we are using S35VN. A little bit of excess. That's the case with Kizer, right? They put the freaking number KI4509. That's not, it's just a number that doesn't really need to be on there. The Kizer logo is fine. The S35VN is fine. It says Sealion, and then let's see if we can get up there. Let me look in my light here. I actually, you know what? I think maybe we should just zoom in a bit. What does it say there? Let me hold my hand still. Messerunicum. Okay. Well, there you go. Let's go back out here. But that's what it says on the blade. I'm not familiar with that, if that is the designer's name or the original, designer's logo. I'm not familiar with that, but there you go for your information. The blade is fantastic. We have a flat that carries out, it's a typical drop point blade. We've got a flat that carries out about, 60% the length. Reasonable thickness carried out to the tip, so nothing dainty out here, but just bear in mind it is only 120 thousandths, so it's not a lot of thickness to begin with. Don't stick that tip into something and then pry around with it. It's likely it'll snap off no matter what it's made out of. Yeah, it's going to be fairly durable. This is a satin finish that's very typical for Kizer. I like Kizer's tumbled finish. It's not often that I see that over the satin finish. I say this a lot, I'm kind of bored personally with satin finishes. I like tumbled finishes. Some people are going to say, well, I'm bored with tumbled finishes, and I like to see satin finishes. It's a preference thing. But yeah, given the case, even with this being a satin finish, they did a good job knocking this down. This is not sharp up here. It's very comfortable. No jimping back here, but I don't think it really needs it. This does drop down to a pretty, reasonably thin cutting edge. This is going to be a fantastic little EDC blade shape. You're going to be able to do your puncture tasks. You're going to be able to do your slicing tasks. You're going to be able to cut continuously because there's really nothing in the cutting path, and there's not a lot of potential resistance there on that blade. It's just a good blade. Nice little sharpening choil. I don't know if the sharpening choil is quite big enough, but it's there, right? Depends on how you sharpen. But yeah, I had no issues with the blade. Nice glassy smoothness, really well done edge, right? You can, if it's not sharp enough for you, then put your own edge on it, right? But for most people, it's going to be just fine. Absolutely. I don't want to imply that it's not sharp at all. In fact, it's every now and then I get somebody that's like, my knife came dull, not their Kizer knife, just any knife. They're like, my knife came dull. And what they mean is that it wasn't 13 thousandths behind the edge and it wasn't mirror polished, right? So it was just an opportunity for them to tell everybody that they know how to put that type of edge on a blade, and that no blade is truly sharp unless it's their edge. Okay. But for the rest of us, for the other 99% of us, yeah, this is plenty sharp. It will shave paper. It'll shave your arm. It's going to do your EDC tasks. It's made out of a steel that exemplifies, all of that. It's going to be just fine. Sorry, minor ramble. Moving down to the handle scales here. Again, love that blue pivot collar. That adds some nice class. I think blue and titanium looks good when it's done correctly. Couple of standoffs back here. Nice open body pillar construction, so you're going to be able to easily take a rag and just clean that out if you're using it and it gets gunked up. Pocket clip is not deep carry, but it carries deep enough. It's certainly not shallow carry. There's 2 screws in there, and it is set into the titanium, meaning there is no play. There's no hardware. And hey, look, there's no lanyard hole. Thank you. For the most part, people don't really use lanyards anymore, so I think that's great. They just were like, no, you know what? The back of the handle is going to be too small, so if we try to force a lanyard hole in there, it's going to mess with the position of the pocket clip. Smart move, right? Pocket clip was prioritized over everything else. That's great. Pocket clip is not sharp. Plenty of retention. Easy to get over the pants. Goes with the design. The blue contrast is nice. This is more of a subdued blue, and this is more of a reflective blue. It's almost a different shade. That's fine, though. I don't have a problem with that at all. Pocket clip is great. It's going to carry just fine. It does have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. You can see that we're locking up at probably about 35%. And then, sorry, I bumped the camera. The blade is coming in. Oh, it's a little bit off. Let's see if we can fix that by just tightening it up. I've been flipping this knife a lot, and as is the case a lot of the time, with a new knife, after you kind of flip it for a while, the blade can come off center a little bit. That's usually fixed by a little turn on the pivot. So let's get it right there, and we can all watch together. Just barely tighten it just a little bit. Are we coming back? How are we now? Closer. Are we centered now? I feel like we're centered. Let's try it. Okay, yeah. All right, we're fine. So that's the case. Guys, if that happens, there's nothing wrong with your knife. Just give it a little turn. It doesn't take much of these knives that have really, really tight tolerances and everything is so perfectly put together, right? It just takes a little tiny turn. And then just get yourself some blue Loctite. And I'll take this opportunity to show you guys what you want. You can also pick this up down in my store that I reference. 242 blue Loctite, which comes in a red container. That's very confusing because there is red Loctite, but it's 242 is what you're looking for. You take a tiny dot, don't soak the pivot, a tiny dot. Take the pivot out, a tiny dot of it, and put it on the threads, and then screw it back in, and the threads, spread it around and get it, properly set in. Get the action the way that you want it. Make sure the blade's centered, and then just let it sit there for 36 hours or so, and then it should be just fine for a while. Red Loctite sucks. Don't use red Loctite. Anyways, yeah, so all the way around, I mean, little things that I can nitpick. I don't like this area down here that keeps me confined to this area, right? But it's not that big of a deal because I can still get my whole hand around it. The knife is unbelievably comfortable anyway. The ergonomic lines absolutely lock you in, so that's fine. Flipper tab seems a little big on this design, but as you saw up against the PM2, it's still not that tall. It's going to bother some people. It's not going to bother everybody for sure. I'm bored of the satin finish. I see it on everything, but it's no big deal. Some of the excess like model numbers and things, but there's a lot of companies who have that. I don't know that I can complain too much. Gosh, guys, there's really not a lot to complain about here. I think the cherry on top of this is, as is the case with most Kizer knives. And by the way, there will be a link down in the description where you can pick this knife up for yourself. As is the case with many Kizer knives, their prices are really good, considering they oftentimes are using materials like titanium and S35VN. This knife comes in at $175. I think that is completely and totally fair. I don't have a problem with that price at all, and I think this knife is well worth the money. This knife is absolutely going to go on my most recommended knives playlist, so you can check that playlist out. And like I said, you can check this knife out in the link in the description. Thank you so much, Mr. Anonymous, for sending this guy along. This was really, really cool, and I was very tempted to keep this knife for myself, but as I said in the giveaway, if somebody sends me a knife for free and I'm tempted to keep it, that's a good sign that I should give it away. So that's what I did. Anyways, guys, that's going to be pretty much it for today's overview and review. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.